Our guest speaker is going to be Mike Ivey, who's been here several times. And I think he would claim to be not too much of a speaker, but I've heard him several times. And he does an excellent job and always has very thought-provoking and real interesting way of looking at things. And so I'm looking forward to today's talk. I think it's on being present, although the title is, Are We There Yet? So Mike, the podium is yours.
The reason I claim not to be much of a speaker is that most of my life it has scared me to death to do this sort of thing. I'm more comfortable with the written word, so I write it and then I read it to you. Let's see. Let me play with this for a minute. Okay. Is that good? Okay. About 18 years ago, I was driving through North Carolina to the Outer Banks. We were in a long line of cars doing about 60 on a two-lane highway approaching the coast and passing through a little piece of national forest. There was a wide grassy shoulder along the highway, and beyond it, pine woods. It was late afternoon, the sun low in the west behind us. Far ahead, I saw an animal walking toward us on the shoulder near the edge of the woods. First, I thought it might be a dog. Then, as we got closer, I thought, coyote. Just as we were about to pass it, I blurted out, "That's a red wolf." There was no chance to slow down in that line of speeding cars, but I pulled off and turned around at the first opportunity. There was almost no traffic headed inland, so I drove slowly, watching for the wolf, knowing how unlikely it was that it would still be walking beside a busy highway in broad daylight. But there it was, still walking along the shoulder on the other side of the road. I drove a little past it and pulled off onto the shoulder on my side and shut the car off. We sat there and watched as the wolf calmly walked by and continued on its way. No one else stopped or even seemed to notice. For me, this story has become a metaphor for the way most people live their lives most of the time. Like the drivers of those cars, we are always going somewhere, either literally or figuratively, and we're usually in a hurry. We're more focused on where we're going than where we are. We don't pay attention to what we're doing in the present because our minds are on the future, anticipating whatever comes next. Not only do we fail to stop and smell the roses, we don't even see the rose bush as we rush by. We don't pay attention, we don't notice, we don't fully experience whatever is happening right here, right now. We don't really live our lives, we just hurry through them. The alternative to all this is mindfulness, which simply means bringing our full awareness to whatever we are experiencing moment by moment. Or to borrow a phrase from Ram Dass, be here now. And of course, you're always here and it's always now. I once saw one of those decorative wall plaques in a gift shop that just said, "You are here," which seems like a useful reminder. I sometimes think I need one in every room of the house, and probably both cars too. To go along with it, I should have a watch with a lighted display that always says, "Now." All we have is the present moment. The past and the future exist only as thoughts. They have no reality outside our minds. We can't actually live in the past or future, but we can certainly allow them to occupy our thoughts and distract us from the present. You've probably heard the saying, life is what happens while you're making other plans. Our lives happen in a series of present moments. We can either experience those moments or miss them because we aren't paying attention. I find that when I do manage to be fully present and aware, my experience feels richer and deeper and more meaningful. So I try to cultivate that awareness in myself. So far, my success has been inconsistent. But I have found a couple of little tricks that often work well for me that I want to share with you. These are basically just ways of playing with your attitudes and expectations, giving yourself a fresh perspective. For the first of these, let's take another look at all those people hurrying to the beach. Let's move on to the next day when they are comfortably settled at the beach, enjoying their vacation. Most of them will now behave very differently. We all behave differently when we're on vacation. And one of the big differences is that we pay attention. We become much more aware of our experience, more conscious of our surroundings, more present in each moment. We open ourselves up and take everything in. We try not to miss anything. Why do we do that? What is it about being on vacation that makes us so much more aware? Is it something we can transfer to our everyday lives? Can we experience the world all the time the way we do on vacation? I think there are three characteristics of vacations that contribute to our heightened awareness. First, we give ourselves permission to stop worrying about everything. Worry keeps our minds trapped in the future. Taking a break from it allows us to bring our attention back to the present. And conversely, having our attention in the present helps us to stop worrying. We already know that worrying is a waste of time and energy. It never helps. So try to take a vacation from worry. Maybe a day or an hour, whatever you can manage. Just give yourself permission to stop worrying for a while. If you feel a strong obligation to worry about things, reassure yourself that you can always start worrying again after the vacation is over. The second characteristic of vacations that I want to look at is the novelty of the experience. When we go on vacation, we often go somewhere new and unfamiliar. Almost everything we see and hear and smell is a fresh experience. We notice all of it. Nothing is ignored or taken for granted because none of it is familiar. In our daily lives, we tend to pay very little attention to anything that's become ordinary or familiar. We don't really notice the furniture in our house, the tree in the front yard, or the other houses on our street. Because these things are there all the time, day after day, they claim almost none of our attention. The same is true of routine activities, like mowing the lawn or washing dishes. We bring very little awareness to activities that we do over and over. Once it becomes familiar, we stop paying attention. What we are doing is staying stuck in the past, thinking that we have seen this before or done this before, so we experience the present just as a repetition of the past. It's been said that once you learn to identify a robin, you will never see a robin again. All you will see is your idea of a robin. In the movie Smoke, Augie, the owner of a small tobacco shop in Brooklyn, goes out at the same time every morning, sets up his camera in exactly the same spot, and takes a picture of the street corner in front of his shop. When he pulls out his albums to show to a friend, the friend starts flipping through them and says, "They're all the same picture." And Augie tells him, "They're all the same, but each one is different from all the others." He goes on to point out some of the differences: the angle of light, the weather, the people passing by, the way the people are dressed. No two pictures are really the same if you take the time to look at them. That's what we need to be aware of. Nothing is exactly the same from one day to the next. The tree in the yard is not the same today as yesterday or the day before. We need to look at everything as if we have never seen it before. The third characteristic of vacations that I find relevant is their brevity. We know they will end. The experience will not continue indefinitely. Just as we take for granted anything we have seen or done many times before, so too do we fail to pay attention to anything we expect to see or do many times again. We don't have to look at that tree today because we can always look at it tomorrow. But when we're on vacation, we know we can't look at it tomorrow, so we make sure we notice it today. I'm going to return to this topic in a minute, but for now, just consider how your awareness would change if you knew the vacation was ending tomorrow and this was your last chance to see and do everything. You would be fully alert, attentive, observant. You would make sure you didn't waste any time or miss anything. That's the attitude we need to bring to every experience. To tie all this together, let's consider two people taking walks on the Creeper Trail, one of them local and one a visitor. The local guy is walking along a familiar section of the trail, thinking about what he needs to do when he gets home from his walk. He may notice that there are some birds flitting around. He may notice some familiar landmark, like the rock face with ferns on it. But eventually he realizes that he has walked at least a mile without noticing a single thing. So he looks around for about 30 seconds, then gets lost in his thoughts again. The visitor is only in Abingdon for a weekend. He has never been on the Creeper Trail before and has only one day to see it. He sees and hears every bird, every squirrel and chipmunk. He notices how the light hits the ferns on the rock face and how many different shades of green the ferns are. He feels the cool, humid air. He smells the damp earth and decaying leaves. He becomes like a sponge, absorbing the whole experience of a walk on the trail, making sure he takes it all in. The poor local guy who is so familiar with the trail will probably never experience it that way. We usually have vivid memories of our vacations, even years later, because we were fully present and really paying attention. So my suggestion is to approach every experience with the alertness and awareness you would if you were on vacation, never having seen it or done it before, and not expecting to ever again. Of course, in a larger metaphorical sense, we are all on vacation, and our vacations will eventually come to an end. We are all going to die, and none of us knows when. But most of us expect to be pretty old when it happens. We mostly live privileged, insulated lives. We don't have to be concerned about suicide bombers or Ebola outbreaks. We find it hard to think about death as an immediate reality. But it is always a possibility as a result of a car crash, random violence, a sudden stroke or heart attack, or any number of other potential misfortunes. Many diverse spiritual traditions, ranging from Native American to Buddhist, teach that there is great value in contemplating your death. One of the benefits of this practice is an increased awareness and appreciation of everything we think of as ordinary. It's very much like the knowledge that the vacation will end, but taken to a higher level, knowing that everything will end, or at least everything as we now know it. There's a story of a Sufi who was asked how he had benefited from his spiritual practice. He replied, "When I wake in the morning, I feel like a man who is not sure he will live until evening." The questioner asked, "Doesn't everyone know this?" And the Sufi said, "They certainly do, but not all of them feel it." We all know we will die. We all know it could be soon. But we mostly know it intellectually. We don't feel the reality of it. We've all heard stories of people who are diagnosed with a terminal illness and gain a deeper appreciation for everything they had previously taken for granted. The abstract knowledge that their life will end at some indefinite time suddenly becomes an immediate, concrete reality that changes the way they experience every moment. They not only know but feel that all those little daily events that seem so ordinary and inconsequential will not continue and must be appreciated now. Contemplating death with this visceral awareness of its reality can be a transforming experience. Like Thoreau, we don't want to discover when we come to die that we have not lived. A sense of the impermanence of life can take many forms. I heard an interview with a woman who had grown up in a Jehovah's Witness family in the rural South. As a child, she was immersed in the belief that they were living in the end times and that any day could bring the end of this world and the beginning of Armageddon. She spoke of how precious that made every day to her and how much more she appreciated every experience because she never knew when it might be the last. I realize that contemplating death, or even Armageddon, may sound pretty heavy and serious, but it gives us another useful technique for playing with our consciousness. I do a lot of what-if scenarios to try to make myself more aware. What if today really were the final day of my vacation? What if I knew the world would end tomorrow? What if I knew I would die tomorrow in a car crash? What if I were a prisoner waiting to be executed? Sometimes I try to stretch my imagination a little farther and ask, what if I have incarnated into this life for just this one day? No past, no future, just today. What if right now is my only opportunity to experience this life? The point of all this, whether we think in terms of vacations, death, or the end of the world, is to make ourselves more aware, more mindful of where we are and what we are doing right here and right now, so that we can actually live our lives instead of just passing through them in our usual distracted trance. The Buddhists talk a lot about mindfulness and also about impermanence, and I believe there's a close relationship between the two. By contemplating the impermanence of our experiences, we become more mindful. We bring more of our awareness to each experience and appreciate it more fully. If you drink a cup of coffee as if it's the only cup of coffee you will ever drink, what will it taste like? If you pet the cat as if you will never be able to do that again, what will it feel like? If you hug your loved ones with a deep awareness that it could be the last time, what will your feelings be? What does it feel like to breathe and be aware of it? What does a robin really look like? How rich would a day be if we really experienced the whole thing? Thank you.